Oshiomhole wants Saraki to vacate Senate seat, says he should leave APC's crown with APC. Ogun State man arrested for sleeping with his daughter. In international news, U.S. imposes sanctions on Turkish officials over detention of American pastor. And in sports, Jos Federal Court adjourns NFF Pinnick Giwa case till September.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Now that Senate President Bukola Saraki has left the ruling All Progressives Congress for the opposition People's Democratic Party, APC wants him to leave the post he attained as an APC senator. ANN's Lucy Adeyemi reports.
APC National Chairman Adams Oshiomhole says Saraki must do the right thing and vacate his seat. This was the outcome of a meeting held by President Muhammadu Buhari with Oshiomhole and some APC senators. The party national chairman says it will be honorable for Saraki to leave the crown in the family to whom it belongs. Oshiomhole says no one in APC was surprised about recent defections because they had seen the signs for a while that they would happen. He said the defectors had actually overstayed in the party. He expressed happiness about Saraki's comments, crediting him and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo for having tried very hard to resolve the issues that led to his exit. Efforts, he said, came too late. One point that seems to gladden party officials, as pointed out by Oshiomhole, is that APC has maintained its Senate majority. Lucy Adeyemi, ANN News.
Meanwhile, Minister of Information Lai Mohammed says the All Progressives Congress gained nothing from Saraki as Senate President. He also said the party will lose nothing through his defection. The minister was responding to Saraki, who said he left the ruling party because there was no peace, dialogue and cooperation. Saraki charged that APC had disregarded all that could have ensured and promoted harmony. Information Minister wasn't buying any of that. He blamed Saraki for the woes experienced by the government. He said a Senate President from an opposition would have been more beneficial to the ruling party than Saraki, whom he blamed for masterminding delays in budgets and appointments. President Muhammadu Buhari is scheduled to leave on Friday for a 10-day working holiday in London. Presidential aide Femi Adesina said the president has complied with the constitution requirement by sending a letter to Senate President and House Speaker to that effect. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo will be acting president during Buhari's absence. There has been another deadly clash in Plateau State between rival groups in Jos, the state capital. Plateau State Police Command says it responded to a distress call on the attack, but when security operatives arrived at the scene, 4 persons had been killed. Police say exhibits gathered there include AK-47 shells, some wraps of Indian hemp and bottles of illicit drinks. A police spokesman said more security personnel were moved into the area to maintain law and order. News Agency of Nigeria reports conflicting accounts by locals who said it was a herdsman attack. Meanwhile, suspected Fulani herdsmen have allegedly attacked a 50-year-old farmer near Benin City, Edo State capital. Bashir Aliyu was reported to have been attacked by 4 men with a machete, inflicting a deep cut to his head. In May, 6 suspected herdsmen had attacked the same community, raped a woman and beat up her husband. Aliyu says he was attacked in his plantain farm. He's currently receiving treatment in an Auchi hospital. The Federal Road Safety Corps is reporting that more than 200,000 driver's licenses have remained uncollected nationwide. The Corps says 700,000 driver's licenses were produced in the first 7 months of this year across the country. Corps Marshal Dr. Boboye Oyeyemi said the high rate of non-collection of licenses is a major drawback in the Corps' efforts to ensure efficiency in nationwide production and distribution of driver's licenses. Oyeyemi also blamed state internal revenue boards for failing to distribute the licenses after they were produced, as set out in what he called a tripartite agreement. Oyeyemi commented on the recent media reports the alleged massive fraud in the driver's license process. He said the court must rise up to the occasion and close all loopholes. An arrest warrant has been issued on Wednesday against the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, for contempt. The court had summoned him to appear to defend a contempt suit filed against him by Anambra State Chairman of the People's Democratic Party. On 3 occasions, Yakubu failed to appear. Yakubu's lawyers told the court his client could not appear because he was leading a team of ECOWAS electoral officers to Mali. The judge pointed out Yakubu had refused to honor the court's invitation 3 times in the past and would no longer tolerate his continued absence. He rejected the Mali trip excuse. Justice Stephen Palm said the court would not allow Yakubu to continue to tame it for a ride. He has adjourned the case till Wednesday. Sometimes one grapples with some inconceivable situations and events that just don't fit into the realms of normality. So when news breaks that a man sleeps with his daughter, it sends shivers through the spine. Well, that is exactly what has allegedly happened in Shagamu, Ogun State, where a 45-year-old man, Julius Ochim, has been arrested for allegedly having sexual intercourse with his daughter. The arrest followed a complaint to the police by the daughter that Ochim had been having sex with her for 8 years after her mother's death. She alleged to have even got pregnant and had a baby girl for her father 3 years ago. The suspect is said to have confessed to the crime. He allegedly blamed the devil for it. He should get his head examined. Stay with us, CNN News will be back after these messages.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand, that's Palasa phone.
Welcome back. This is CNN News. Now to some African stories. 3 Zimbabweans are reportedly shot dead after the army opened fire in central Harare on Wednesday as protests erupted over alleged fraud in the country's election. The opposition MDC alliance alleged that the governing ZANU-PF party rigged Monday's elections. The presidential result has not been declared, but MDC alliance insists that its presidential candidate Nelson Chamisa won the election. Parliamentary results show ZANU-PF heading for a big majority in the first election after Mugabe was ousted from power. The government had vowed to enforce a security crackdown to prevent further unrest after the army opened fire to disperse opposition protest in Harare. A police spokesperson, Charity Charamba, warned demonstrators against unlawful acts and gatherings, saying law enforcement agents would arrest all of them. For now, there is calm in the capital. The government of Rwanda and one UN Rwanda have signed the second United Nations Development Assistance Plan 2018 to 2023 worth more than $600 million over the next 5 years. This amount will address both development programming and a robust humanitarian response. UNDAP is a United Nations strategic planning document that outlines areas of UN support towards the National Developmental Agenda by the United Nations system in Rwanda. Rwanda's Ministry of Finance noted that the support will supplement government's efforts to deliver on its development agenda. Rwanda was selected 10 years ago with 700 countries to become a pilot for the UN reform known as One UN. Morocco's King Mohammed VI has sacked Mohamed Boussaid, the country's economy and finance minister. The king's decision was said to have been taken to enforce the principle of accountability, which should be applied to all officials regardless of their rank. There was no further information on the main reason for the minister's dismissal. Eyewitnesses at the king's 19th enthronement anniversary earlier this week said the security personnel prevented the minister from entering the tent where high-ranking officials were seated, but was taken to another location. 4 people have tested positive for Ebola in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on Wednesday, just days after the outbreak was declared over. Health Ministry said in a statement 20 people have died from hemorrhagic fevers in a densely populated area near the town of Beni, close to Uganda border. Earlier case killed 33 people in the northwest of the huge country, but the ministry said there was no evidence linking this outbreak with the last one, which began in April and occurred over 2,500 kilometers away. It says a team of 12 experts from the health ministry will arrive in the zone on Thursday to set up a mobile lab. This is the 10th outbreak of Ebola in Central African country since 1976, when the virus was discovered near a river in the north. Congolese and international health officials deployed an experimental vaccine during the last outbreak, which helped contain its spread. 3 Sudanese primary girls were killed and 4 others injured on Wednesday when a part of their school building collapsed. State media reported the accident occurred in Omdurman on the west bank of the Nile River. It did not say how old the school building was, but lax construction standards have often raised concerns about building safety in Sudan. Gunmen attacked a convoy carrying election materials in central Mali on Wednesday, triggering a shootout in which 4 soldiers and 8 attackers were killed. The convoy was transporting some youths and election materials. The Defense Ministry spokesman said the attack occurred late on Tuesday on the road between Nampala and Kura in the south-central region. He gives no further details. Figures from the Ministry of Territorial Administration showed Mali's presidential election has been beset by attacks at the hands of suspected Islamic militants and allied ethnic militia. Armed attackers succeeded in shutting down more than 600 polling stations on Sunday. 3 journalists investigating reports of Russian mercenaries fighting in Central African Republic were reportedly shot dead when their vehicle was attacked. War correspondent Auckland Dresmer, filmmaker Alexander Rastoguria, and cameraman Kirill Radchenko were attacked earlier this week while traveling from CAR capital, Bongo, to Sibut. They were to look into reports that fighters from a Russian private military company, the Wagner Group, were operating there. Wagner PMC had hit the headlines before for activities in Syria, and recent reports emerged that the group may have deployed to CAR. Russian officials denied ties with the fighters. The journalist had been sent to CAR by the Investigative Control Center, an investigative journalism project sponsored by an exiled former tycoon. 40 children and young people have drowned in the past 2 months while swimming on beaches in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. Fire Brigade Chief Papa Ange Michel Diatta said the victims were aged between 7 and 23 years. 15 people have drowned earlier this week. Diatta said the number of deaths that occurred since the start of June were on beaches where swimming is forbidden in the West African capital suburbs. He said swimming is banned on beaches because of waves, quicksands, rocks, and knocks of access to firemen, but people had ignored the rules. The toll is higher than in previous years. Uganda has made its first beef exports to Egypt, shipping 50 tons of the commodity. The consignment was the first batch from the Egypt-Uganda Food Security Company in Kampala's north. The company's CEO said Uganda meat stands a better chance because of its high quality. The shipment is a combination of agreements President Museveni signed with Egyptian leader Abdel Fattah al-Sisi during a visit to Cairo 3 months ago. President Museveni said that beef export from Uganda would be preferred because it originates from organically fed livestock. Stay with ANN News. We'll be back after these messages.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the fact behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby. We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward. Wait, stop. You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down, keep walking to the left. Yes. You're almost here. Keep going. You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international scene. The United States has imposed sanctions on two top officials in Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan's cabinet on Wednesday. This is seen as a new attempt to get NATO ally Turkey to turn over an American pastor accused of backing a coup attempt against Erdogan 2 years ago. The U.S. Treasury Department acted against Justice Minister Abdulhamid Gul and Interior Minister Suleiman Soylu over the country's imprisonment of Andrew Brunson. The U.S. has blamed both men for being involved in Brunson's arrest and detention. Turkey's foreign ministry has called Washington's action a hostile stance and said it would retaliate. Relations between the United States and Turkey have plummeted over Brunson, who spent almost 2 years in custody before he was transferred to house arrest last week. China's Navy will join 26 countries in military exercises off Australia's north coast this month. Australia's defense minister said on Wednesday there would be no live fire drills because of the strained ties between the two nations. The naval exercises are being hosted by Australia and will also include its major ally, the United States, which expelled China in May from its military training around Hawaii. That is a response to what it sees as Beijing's militarization of islands in the South China Sea. Ties between Australia and China hit a low after Canberra passed laws aimed at thwarting Chinese influence in domestic affairs and also over China's assertiveness in the South China Sea. Australia stuck with the invitation it issued China last September, a sign analysts say hints at a thawing in relations ahead of the drills that begin at the end of this month. The drills will be held in strategic water north of Darwin, where a decision to lease the city's port to a Chinese firm drew a sharp rebuke from the United States. The exercises run to mid-September and involve 27 nations. The president of Kosovo has rejected the idea of dividing the country along ethnic lines to resolve a dispute over its independence from Serbia. Well, President Hashim Thachi told the Associated Press in an interview on Wednesday that he was open to discussing the correction of borders during the difficult peace negotiations between Kosovo and Serbia, mediated by the European Union. In 1999, NATO intervened to stop a bloody Serb crackdown on Albanian separatists in Kosovo. Kosovo declared independence from Serbia in 2008 and is recognized as a separate nation by more than 100 countries, but not by Serbia. Tensions remain high after 7 years of negotiations. AU has made it clear to the governments in Pristina and Belgrade they must normalize relations to advance towards membership in the bloc. The relations of two persons killed by the deadliest fires in Greece in decades have filed a lawsuit against Greek officials for their response to the disaster. They accuse them of negligent manslaughter and felony counts of exposing people to danger. The victims, 70 and 73-year-old teachers, were trapped by flames as they attempted to flee their homes in a seaside area neighboring the worst affected area of Mati, northeast of Athens. The burned bodies were found a day later. At least 90 persons are believed to have died in the wildfire that decimated Greek seaside resort areas. Spain's foreign minister says the European Union's executive branch has allocated $64 million to manage an upsurge of migrant arrivals, mostly from Morocco. Joseph Borrell says at least half of the funds will be used to alleviate the current circumstances in Morocco. An increase in smuggling boats departures there has put a strain on Spanish authorities across the Strait of Gibraltar. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker says the EU has given the North African kingdom more than $100 million to tackle immigration over the past decade. With nearly 23,000 migrants arriving so far this year, Spain has become the main entry point into Europe for migrants crossing the Mediterranean Sea by boat. Finally, in our international segment, a story of compassion. Pope Francis has made a surprise visit to an elderly woman in Rome and greeted fans as he went. The Pope arrived discreetly to visit his acquaintance, an elderly woman who had repeatedly asked to see him, but is physically unable to make the journey to the Vatican. The Pope was accompanied by some Vatican and Italian plainclothes policemen who stood guard at the entrance to the building while the Pope was inside visiting. The Pope's home visit lasted about an hour, and as he left the building, he stopped to shake the hands of the people gathered outside, as he normally does. Overcome with emotion of seeing the Pope so unexpectedly, a woman began crying and told him, quote, "What an immense joy that is, Holy Father," to which he replied, quote, "For me too," end quote. Oh, that is so cool. On that note, we'll take another break and be back with sports. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is NN News. Now sports. The Pinnick versus Giwa NFF leadership case has once again been adjourned to late September by a just federal high court. Pinnick's lawyer had showed the court a letter on Thursday from FIFA that Nigeria risks a ban if Pinnick is not allowed to run the Nigeria Football Federation. Giwa's lawyer countered they were in court to discuss the motion of notice filed by Maju Pinnick's attorney, Festus Keyamo SAN. He said they were not served with the motion, so they could not respond. Presiding Judge Justice Musa Koya advised Keyamo to serve the motion of notice to both plaintiffs and all the defendants in the case to enable them respond. He adjourned the case to the end of September. When 300 international athletes were stranded in Lagos and could not get to Asaba on time for the opening ceremonies, many events were affected. Technical officials of the 2018 African Athletics Championships had to alter the opening day schedules on Wednesday. When they finally made it to Asaba, more problems awaited. Many had no hotel accommodation because no reservations were made. Some didn't have their luggage, which were still stuck in Lagos. Even journalist accreditation was not ready because more journalists than anticipated applied to cover the event. Disappointed Nigerians have taken to Twitter to vent on what they call Nigeria's show of shame. Many countries, including Kenya, could only make it to Asaba on Wednesday after 2 days of delay in Lagos because of connecting flight problems. Some of the affected countries had roles to play in some of the opening events. Those athletes who were fortunate to have made it to Asaba jumped right into action. In the men 100 meters, Nigeria's Ogo Gene Eguero and Sheyi Ogunleye eased into the semi-finals that will be decided on Thursday. All eyes are on Ivory Coast Ben Yusuf Meite, Arthur Gusise and South African Akoni Simbene for what is shaping up to be a showdown between the two countries. It should be a very interesting meet, even though it had a rocky start. Well, that's our report this evening. Thanks for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit the website innenafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CNN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.